Brother ruined our family business with fraud. Now my parents expect me to save their golden child. I never thought I'd be the one writing something like this, but I need to get it out there. This isn't going to be some rant about my brother. I've already told my therapist that. This is more of a screw you to the system, a bit of a revenge story, and a reminder that sometimes the people closest to you can surprise you in the worst way possible. Let me start by giving you a little background. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. My brother, Jack, is the golden child, always has been, and I've always been the responsible one who keeps things together. My parents, especially my mom, always had high expectations for me. I was supposed to be perfect, and while I never resented that, being reliable wasn't easy. Still, I did my best. I went to college, graduated with honors, and landed a steady job. Meanwhile, Jack always did just enough to get by. Now, why was that a problem? After all, parents should support their kids. Sure, but there's a pattern here. Jack always got away with things. When he failed out of college, my parents covered for him. When he messed up his first job at a tech startup, they sent him money to get back on his feet. And when he started working with the family business, I didn't expect much to change. But boy, was I wrong. You see, our family business, Harrison and Sons, wasn't just any business. It was the legacy my grandfather built. My dad spent his entire life running it and passed it down to me and Jack. It was a small but successful construction company. We were well known in the local community. Although not involved in the day-to-day operations, my mom was always there to remind us how proud she was of the business. As the oldest, I was expected to take the reins when my dad decided to retire. Jack, well, he was supposed to help, and I didn't mind. I figured we could work together, even if Jack didn't have much experience or a strong work ethic, but I wasn't prepared for the disaster he would cause. It started small. Jack started taking more and more liberties with the books. At first, it was just slight oversights, miscounting materials, small errors in estimates, or occasionally inflating invoices. I'd noticed these things, but Jack was always quick with an excuse. It's just a mistake. The client won't care. That sort of thing. And because I trusted my brother, I let it slide. I should have known better. One day, I walked into the office to find a mess. Papers everywhere, the printer malfunctioning, and Jack on the phone trying to convince someone to let him extend the payment deadline for a client. I overheard just enough of the conversation to get a sinking feeling in my stomach. I waited until he was done, then asked him what was going on. Nothing, just some clients who were being difficult. But I could tell something was off. I checked the books myself that evening, and what I found made my blood run cold. There were fraudulent entries, fake invoices, inflated costs, and unapproved payments to vendors. I spent the next several hours going through everything, and it became clear that Jack had been siphoning money from the company. Not just small amounts. No, this was serious. It looked like he had been embezzling money for months, possibly even longer. It was a full-blown fraud scheme. I confronted him the next day. "Jack, what the hell is this?" His face turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered. "It's just accounting mistakes. Don't overreact." I didn't even know where to start. I wanted to scream, punch him, ask him how he could do this to our family, but I kept my cool. "You're stealing from our family," I said, my voice cold. "Do you realize how much damage you've done?" He looked at me completely unfazed. "It's not a big deal. We're still making money, right? You're overreacting. No one's going to find out." But I knew this was the tipping point. If I didn't do something, we were going to lose everything. The business was on the brink of collapse. I knew that if I went to my parents with this, they'd back Jack. They always did. So, I did what I had to do. I called a lawyer and reported the fraud to the authorities. It wasn't easy. I thought about my parents and my dad, who had spent his whole life building this company. But I knew it had to be done. Jack needed to face the consequences of his actions. My parents, as expected, were furious. They didn't believe me at first. My mom kept telling me that I was being harsh and that I was exaggerating. But when the investigation started, the truth came out. Jack had stolen over $300,000 from the company. And it wasn't just the money. He had forged documents, lied to clients, and dragged the company's reputation through the mud. The damage was done. Jack was arrested. The police charged him with embezzlement, and the court case dragged on for months. My parents didn't speak to me for a while. They were heartbroken over what had happened to Jack. They thought I had overreacted and that I should have handled it privately within the family. But I wasn't going to help him. I couldn't. Not after what he'd done. Not after all the years of being overlooked and blamed for things that weren't my fault. Jack had ruined our family business, and I was done being the one responsible for cleaning up his mess. The trial was a nightmare. Jack tried to play the victim, claiming that he had been under pressure and that he was just trying to keep up with the company's demands. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury convicted him on all counts. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. I remember my parents' faces when they found out. My mum was a mess. She cried, saying it wasn't fair, that Jack didn't deserve this. My dad was silent, looking at the ground. I could see the weight of the whole thing crushing him. They had lost their son, their golden child. But they still blamed me, even though I had done the right thing. They said I could have saved Jack, and that I could have fixed things if I had just been patient. But the truth was, Jack had ruined everything. Not just the business, but our family too. Over time, the company recovered. I worked hard to restore its reputation, clean up the financial mess, and rebuild what Jack had torn apart. I brought in a new team, tightened up security, and made sure the books were in order. It took a while, but we were back on track. I even managed to expand the business a bit, turning it into something bigger and more successful than before. As for Jack, he spent 3 years in prison before being released on good behavior. He tried to reach out to me to make amends, but I wasn't having it. I had no sympathy for him. He could rot in hell for all I cared. And that's where the petty revenge comes in. A year after Jack got out, I found out he was trying to get back into the construction business. He'd been calling around, trying to convince old clients to work with him again, offering them better deals. I wasn't going to let that happen. I contacted every client he had worked with, every vendor he had dealt with, and every company that might have been considering working with him. I told them the truth, what he'd done, how he'd ruined our family business, how he'd stolen from clients, how he was a convicted felon. I made sure to leave no stone unturned, and it worked. Jack couldn't get a single job, not one. He was blacklisted from the industry. It felt so sweet. Jack had spent his life coasting by on his charm and his family's reputation, but now he had nothing. He had no money, no career, and no friends. He was completely isolated. My parents, they eventually came around, but not fully. They still talk about Jack sometimes and still wish he could have done better. But I know the truth. And as for me, I've moved on. The family business is thriving, I'm in charge, and I'm not going to let anyone, least of all Jack, bring me down again. Sometimes life has a way of balancing things out. Jack thought he could get away with everything, but in the end, it was me who had the last laugh. And I'm damn proud of that. What do you think about this story? Thank you for watching.